So effective immediately, no person other than a law enforcement officer or licensed security officer shall possess a firearm, either openly or concealed.
Yes, you heard that right. It appears that the governor of New Mexico and professional drywall destroyer, Michelle Lujan Grisham, has decided to go full tyranny mode. And she's not doing this through legislative action. She's doing it through executive fiat. So we're going to get into all of the details of the order. We're going to get into some of the backlash and reaction. All of the details coming up. But before we get into that, while you maybe can't openly or concealed carry according to the governor in certain parts of New Mexico, it's still important to have the proper equipment in order to exercise those rights. Which brings us to today's video sponsor, LAS Concealment. As you can see, I have different models of their holster with different patterns, so you can choose whether you want some camo or you want some more colorful print like this skull pattern over here. What I also like as an option is that if you want, you can have optic cuts for the holsters. So if you add an optic to your gun, it's not going to be jammed because there's extra material there that's blocking it. That's why I had to actually cut my previous holster and make room for the optic. They have a whole host of products, so go to lasconcealment.com and pick up your order today. So yes, on September 8th, 2023, the governor of New Mexico, Stephanie Lujan Grisham, the destroyer of drywalls, came out and held a press conference where she announced her new executive order, which banned the open and concealed carry of firearms. So let's get into the details. Let's watch the press conference and see what she has to say.
So in this public health order, which is effective today, September 8th, which lasts 30 days. And then we'll, like all the other public health orders, we will either amend or renew or adjust, depending upon where we are. So effective immediately, no person other than a law enforcement officer or licensed security officer shall possess a firearm, either openly or concealed, within cities or counties, averaging 1,000 or more violent crimes per 100,000, and more than 90 firearm-related emergency department visits. So to put that in sort of a layman's terms, for 30 days, in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, it's the only place that meets both those standards. Statewide order, but only one place meets both criteria, where we have far too many ER gunshot visits and we have far too many crimes involving firearms. We are suspending open and concealed carry. The purpose is to try to create a cooling off period while we figure out how we can better address public safety and gun violence.
So you heard it right there. This is the primary purpose of this executive order, to ban open and concealed carry in Albuquerque and the county that Albuquerque is contained in. It's pretty clear that they chose this metric of 1,000 violent crimes per 100,000 and this 90-something firearm-related ER visits, or whatever she said, in order for it to only apply to Albuquerque and the county that it is contained in. Now, why is that? Why didn't they do the entire state? Well, it's pretty obvious. Their attempt here, and it's probably not going to work, is to say, oh, well, this is a narrowly tailored executive order. We didn't just do the entire state. This is in an attempt to get some sort of solid legal footing, or as solid as possible legal footing, to justify the order and not just say, oh, this is a workaround to ban something that they've wanted to ban for a long time. And I don't think it's going to work, but this is probably what they're trying to do.
I think it's time we have a really strong debate about all the other constitutional rights. No one right now in New Mexico, and particularly in Albuquerque, is safe in a movie theater, at a park, at a school, at a grocery store, at an Isotopes game, at the university, at the grocery store, I think I said, getting your prescriptions, at work. You just aren't safe. I can't guarantee it, and neither can the men and the women who put on a uniform every day. In that regard, I think it's time to talk about the absoluteness of the discussion and the current court actions. that suggests that the Second Amendment is an absolute right and none of the others are.
So let me get this straight. This order deals with the one area in the state where they have this insane epidemic of gun violence and over 1,000 violent crimes per 100,000. This insane epidemic, so bad that you have to declare an emergency health order because things are so bad. And then on top of that, you say you can't guarantee their safety. The police can't guarantee their safety. People are not safe at these various locations in the state of New Mexico, and particularly in Albuquerque. And your solution is to then ban people who are licensed concealed carry holders, people who legally carry their firearm. They're not prohibited persons. They actually go through the extra steps as law-abiding citizens in order to exercise their fundamental rights. The rights they would need when there's a absent rule of law situation. The police can't protect you. You can't protect them. Violent crime is running rampant. That's when you would want your gun rights the most. That's when you need them the most. So you're saying police cannot provide adequate protection, but we're going to take away your means of protecting you and your family. That is insane.
In addition to that 30-day suspension, and I want to make sure I clarify that suspension does not apply to any private property. Responsible gun owners are certainly not our problem, have never been our problem, and I appreciate the impact that this has. But on private property, this has no bearing.
So she says responsible gun owners are not our problem. They never have been our problem. You know, basically saying, hey, guys, this isn't about you. We have no problem with you. You've never been a problem. We're not trying to apply this to you. Even though the banning of open and concealed carry, including licensed holders, affects responsible gun owners. It almost seems like she's saying people who carry with a license outside of private property are irresponsible gun owners. It's just an insane statement to make. And I do want to make a clarification because I have seen some people try to suggest that, oh, well, she says it doesn't apply to personal property. And because a vehicle, in some people seem to think, is an extension of your home, it's private property, therefore you can still carry in your vehicle, concealed or open. That is not the case. They are even saying here, traveling to and from locations, in your car, you have to keep it locked in a box or have a trigger lock, which you can hear the governor talk about here.
While you're traveling to and from a location, dealing with your firearms, they have to be in a locked box or they have to have a trigger lock. So that's how we support responsible firearm owners in their daily activities.
I like how she says supporting responsible firearm owners in their daily activities, as if the gun owners only have guns because it's just like a fun thing to do. Oh, it's just daily activities. So many activities.
So many activities.
The primary reason people cite in the United States for owning a firearm is self-defense. It's not just a fun little activity, it's a matter of life and death, especially in a place like Albuquerque, where the crime is as bad as the governor is talking about.
And we have called on the U.S. Marshal's Office to do more. They are doing a ton. We want more. And we're asking AFT, DEA, FBI to all do their part. And I have sent yet another communication to the federal government. And I had a call with the director of the U.S. Marshal Service today that they must create a continued presence in New Mexico, given our gun violence and violent crime situations statewide.
So this is where she gets into more of the afterthought portion of the order. And when I say afterthought, I really do mean afterthought. As you can see on the website of the Office of the Governor for New Mexico, Governor announces statewide enforcement plan for gun violence. And if we scroll down, we can see the primary thing mentioned here is the action to prohibit open and concealed carry of firearms. But then right below that, we see the public health order also directs. And then it mentions a bunch of things like checking with firearm dealers to ensure compliance with all sales and storage laws. They want to test sewer water in schools for illegal substances like fentanyl. They want to report about gunshot victims at hospitals, more ban of guns on state property, increasing state police presence in Albuquerque, and suspending the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative. But it's interesting she talks about adding federal agents, and she lists a bunch of the three-letter agencies and reaching out to DOJ. to help them out. Because in this press conference, the man sitting next to her is the police chief of Albuquerque. And he has criticized this approach. He says it's not agents that they need, but prosecutors.
Too many times I hear, like, over and over again, every time that something occurs, somebody wants to bring more federal resources. I don't need more federal agents in Albuquerque. Do you know what I need? I need more federal prosecutors.
So it seems pretty clear that the governor's office didn't have good lines of communication with the police department in Albuquerque or the sheriff's office or the police at large in New Mexico. Because even though they were present at the press conference, they're putting out statements that run contrary to the governor, and they're disagreeing. For example, look at this tweet from the Albuquerque Police Department where it says Chief Medina sent the following message to APD officers about the governor's state order on gun possession. The governor issued a 30-day state order that limits gun possession in Bernalillo County, including the city of Albuquerque. The governor made it clear that state law enforcement, not APD, will be responsible for enforcement of civil violations of the order. Our officers at APD will continue to focus on the enforcement of criminal laws and arresting the criminals who are driving the violent crime in the city. So Albuquerque PD is trying to be like, hey, not us. That's state police. We're not going to be enforcing that. That's not our business. We're going to focus on the real criminals. Here you have the Democrat mayor of Albuquerque trying to distance himself from the governor's order. He says, we welcome meaningful solutions and additional resources to fight crime in Albuquerque. APD is not responsible for enforcing the governor's ban. Our officers will continue to enforce all criminal laws, combat gun violence, and push for needed justice in our city. The sheriff's office of Bernalillo County, where this order applies, because this is the county where Albuquerque is in. Their office made a super long post, but we'll try to focus on the important bit here, where he says, however, as elected sheriff, I have reservations regarding this order. While I understand and appreciate the urgency, the temporary ban challenges the foundations of our Constitution, which I swore an oath to uphold. I am wary of placing my deputies in positions that could lead to civil liability conflicts, as well as the potential risks posed by prohibiting law-abiding citizens from their constitutional right to self-defense. I was elected to represent and safeguard all constituents and to ensure the balance between our rights and public safety is maintained. That means we must critically evaluate any proposed solution to the deeply rooted issue of gun violence, ensuring we both protect our community and uphold the values that define us as a nation. So then he lists a bunch of things his office is going to do, talks about how he's not in complete alignment with the governor, but basically also decides to distance himself from the governor, says, hey, we can't really do this. I have an oath to uphold to the Constitution. So that's pretty crazy. We're not talking about super Republican areas here. These are Democrat strongholds for the state. So now we get into the Q&A section of this press conference, and it gets even more amazing.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the penalty for violating the civil order. Would it be unlawful carrying of a deadly weapon? You refer to a misdemeanor.
Well, I mean, the reason I did that is because it's lawful in New Mexico to have firearms. So in my suspending that, it's not like I can create a new law or a standard. So what I can do is when you violate a public health order, it's the lowest level of violation. And that is an enforcement issue.
So this is interesting. The reporter asked her, what's the penalty for violating this? Is it, unlawful deadly weapon or something like that? What's the deal? And she correctly says, well, it's legal in New Mexico to own, possess, carry these things. It's the law. So they can't charge you for something that is the law that you're allowed to do. It's explicitly stated. You get a concealed carry permit, you can carry concealed, you can carry openly. That's the law in the state of New Mexico. And as you can see on the website Source New Mexico, no clear penalty for violating New Mexico public health order on guns. Governor Lujan Grisham directive only mentions, quote, civil administrative penalties, not criminal ones. The New Mexico government on Friday enacted a public health order prohibiting people from possessing firearms, but could not say what penalties people will face for violating the new directive. So that's pretty incredible, though I have seen elsewhere talking about $5,000 fines, misdemeanor charge for violating a public health order or whatever. But again, this is something that is explicitly allowed under New Mexico law. And she's like, oh, I can't change the law. But that's effectively what you're doing, because if it's allowed by law, but you're going to criminalize it through executive fiat, you are changing the law. And that's why I think ultimately this is going to fail it's going to be struck down. Even though she's just doing it for 30 days or whatever, I think the courts are going to see just how crazy this is and react fairly quickly. But we'll see. Maybe I have a little too much faith in the justice system. Maybe that's just me being naive. But I think this is just so crazy that some court somewhere will have to step in.
All the examples you cited are crimes. Kids shooting at other kids, shooting from cars. So what's the value of the civil order? Why not just do better law enforcement?
Both. The value of the order is that it gives me three things. One, it says it's a statewide issue and it's a message to everyone to start leveraging their resources and arresting people. Two, the jurisdictions come at this, including with the DOJ restrictions, differently, without the leveraging and the additional resources, arresting, and where do they go? We got to make sure that everyone is bumping up their services. It's a message to the Metropolitan Detention Center. It's a message to the HMOs. You better figure out treatment. We have been sort of stalled out, to your point. This order basically says, stop stalling out, and to your point, just arrest everyone. Well, I also have to have the ability, I can't arrest everyone. There are literally too many people to arrest.
Well,
This
you
would
can't
allow
arrest
us,
anyone with a
huh?
civil- If someone's got a concealed carry permit in Albuquerque walking down a public street, they're not going to get arrested.
I can make the point that maybe they should be. And this is the point. I'm willing to do anything and everything.
Okay, now we're really cooking with how much of a whack job this lady is. So the reporter correctly states, hey, all of the things you've talked about so far are crimes. Kids shooting at other kids, these types of violent crimes. These are crimes. Why not just go after the criminals? Why not just do this order, this emergency order, which, does give her some level of funding, like she can go and fund the state police a little bit more for an emergency and send more resources to the area. Emergency orders do give her some of that power. So why not just do that? Why not, get more prosecutors in, maybe get more judges? And she decides to say, oh, but it sends a message. But what does that have to do with the open or concealed carry part? And to his point, she says, oh, but I can't, you say just go arrest everybody. We don't have enough people. We can't arrest everybody. There's too many people to arrest. So what's her solution? To criminalize more people, law-abiding people, for something that's legal, that's good. She wants to create more criminals that they don't have the capacity to arrest, to basically increase the size of the haystack, or maybe adding even more needles into the haystack or more needles into a stack of needles. She wants to make it way bigger, way more complicated, a bigger problem. She wants to create a bigger problem instead of directing actual resources to the real problem. So criminalizing more people, it's insane. Like, how does she not look back at this and think to herself, this doesn't make any sense? If we already have limited resources, why would I criminalize more people, the good people, who are not the problem? As she said herself, law-abiding gun owners, they're not our problem. They never have been our problem. Well, you made them the problem. And then here's the amazing part. The reporter then says, well, someone with a concealed carry permit, if they're walking down the street, you're not going to arrest them. They're not going to be arrested. And instead of the governor saying, yeah, you're right. Like, of course, like I said earlier, legal, responsible gun owners, they're not our problem. They never have been our problem. Instead, she says, well, the point I'm trying to make is maybe they should be. Maybe they should be arrested. This law-abiding person who went through the steps to get a license is trying to do the right thing. The very thing that's allowed by law, that I claimed I'm not changing the law on it because I can't. This is just, I can't change the law. I'm the governor. It's executive fiat. She's literally saying they should be arrested. The point is they should be arrested. This is crazy. This is insane. This should be an impeachable offense. And to this very effect, people have already voiced this. People who have the power to make this change. Because immediately after the governor put out this order, you had calls for this very action. As you can see here from KRQE News, 2 lawmakers call for impeachment of Governor Lujan Grisham after public health order. State Representatives Stefani Lord and John Block are now calling for her impeachment, claiming the order is an infringement on New Mexicans' Second Amendment right. Quote, we made an oath, which is a promise that we swear that we're going to uphold the Constitution, the rights of New Mexicans, and she threw that right out the window, said Rep. Lord. I was completely shocked and taken by surprise that she would do such a gross overreach and completely violate the Constitution. Representative Block made a statement saying, our governor, she called for open season on law-abiding citizens by subverting the state and federal constitutions and laws of our state. And that's something that needs to be remedied immediately. You even had the likes of Elon Musk coming out and saying, at risk of stating what should be obvious, deliberately violating the Constitution is next level illegal. How soon can this person be removed from office? And it wasn't just Republicans or the richest man in the world criticizing her over this order. She even had Democrats and anti-gun activists as well, but we'll get into that in a bit because we have even crazier comments from the governor.
You took an oath to the Constitution. Isn't it unconstitutional to say you cannot exercise your carry license?
With one exception, and that is if there's an emergency, and I've declared an emergency for a temporary amount of time, I can invoke additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute. There are restrictions on free speech. There are restrictions on my freedoms. In this emergency, this 11-year-old and all these parents who have lost all these children, they deserve my attention to have the debate about whether or not in an emergency we can create a safer environment. Because what about their constitutional rights? I took an oath to uphold those too. And if we ignore this growing problem without being bold, I've said to every other New Mexican, your rights are subrogated to theirs.
And this is where it really goes off the rails. He asked her a question about, you took an oath to uphold the Constitution. Does this not violate the Constitution to prevent people, licensed carry holders, from exercising their rights as not just allowed by the Constitution, but as prescribed in law in the state of New Mexico? And she says, but with one exception, if I make an emergency health order that says otherwise. And she talks about how the Constitution's not absolute, including her oath to uphold the Constitution. She says her oath is not absolute. And that statement in particular is quite wild, saying, hey, my oath isn't absolute. My oath to uphold and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, that's not absolute. That's a crazy statement. And these comments in particular got some people on the Democratic side to come out against the governor. And these are not the type of people you would expect to come out against her. For example, you have one of the Parkland students, David Hogg, well-known anti-gun activist. He said, I support gun safety, but there is no such thing as a state public health emergency exception to the U.S. Constitution. And this is in response to his quote tweet of CNN Politics saying, New Mexico's governor orders suspension of open and concealed carry of guns in Albuquerque, declaring gun violence and drug abuse a public health emergency after a string of recent deadly shootings. And you can see the replies. You have Robbie Starbuck saying, are you okay? Have you hit your head? I can't believe you just said something sane. You have Shoe on Head saying, am I dreaming? Redheaded Libertarian, heartbreaking. The worst person you know just made a great point. You have Congressman Ted Lieu out of California saying, I support gun safety laws. However, this order from the governor of New Mexico violates the U.S. Constitution. No state in the union can suspend the federal Constitution. There is no such thing as a state public health emergency exception to the U.S. Constitution. And you can see David Hogg quote tweeting Ted Lieu and saying, agreed to that statement. Now, this was so out of character for these people, I started thinking this is probably some sort of coordinated campaign from the Democrat Party. They decided for whatever reason that they want to throw this New Mexico governor under the bus, that this is not going to be popular come election time, so they got to get ahead of it now and say, hey, we're not this lady. We're standing far away from this. She is not with us. She can't sit with us. And just to give you guys a sense of Ted Lieu, if you don't know his legislative history, if we go to VoteSmart, Ted Lieu's voting records on issue guns, we can see he voted against the Federal Law Enforcement Officer Service Weapon Purchase Act. So I assume it would allow them to purchase their service weapons. So, anti-gun move. He voted for the assault weapons ban. He voted for the Active Shooter Alert Act. He voted for the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. This was Biden's gun control measure that passed. Voted for enhanced background checks. He was a co-sponsor of the assault weapons ban. He voted against concealed carry reciprocity. This would allow people who have concealed carry permits in one state to be able to carry in other states. He voted against that. He voted against the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act. So again, this guy is no slouch on gun control laws. He's all about gun control, very anti-gun. I would argue very anti-Second Amendment as well, even though he tries to pretend in this tweet that he's somehow pro-Constitution. But, his voting record would say otherwise. But in this instance, he says, hey, even this goes too far for me. And she mentioned this story of an 11-year-old being killed. This really is the story, I guess, the straw that broke the camel's back. This is what got her, obviously in addition to other things, but again, straw that broke the camel's back. This is what caused her to put out this order in the first place, this story of this 11-year-old boy. As you can see here in the Santa Fe, New Mexican, governor bans carrying guns in Albuquerque after 11-year-old killed. And if we read the story from KOAT 7 Action News, road rage leads to shooting that killed 11-year-old in Albuquerque. Police say someone fired 17 shots at a vehicle following a possible road rage incident. Police arrived to the scene shortly after the gunfire and found 11-year-old Froylin Villegas dead. A woman in her 20s was taken to the hospital and is listed in unstable condition. Police are still searching for a suspect and haven't taken anyone into custody and are asking anyone with information to call the police. So you might have thought, well, maybe they caught the person and this person actually had a concealed carry permit, so that maybe spawned this order in response to the shooting. But they don't even have a suspect. They don't know who these people are. They have no idea whether this person had a concealed carry permit or not. But facts don't matter. Reality doesn't matter to the governor of New Mexico. She just sees another opportunity to go after legal gun owners that she's wanted to go after for a very long time. That's why she's signed multiple anti-gun measures into law. She still wants an assault weapons ban in the state of New Mexico, so this is nothing new for her.
Wait a minute, now, you're talking about crimes. There are already laws against the crimes, so how are there rights?
I got it, but again, if I'm unsafe, who's standing up for that right? If this climate is so out of control, somebody should do something. I'm doing as much as I know to do.
Madam Governor,
Yep.
do you really think that criminals are going to hear this message and not carry a gun in Albuquerque on the streets for 30 days?
No. But here's what I do think. It's a pretty resounding message to everybody else in that community to report a crime.
I'm sorry, did someone just go to a kid's soccer match and pick up one of the mothers and say, hey, you're governor for the day, do what you want? Like, this is crazy. She once again responds to the reporter saying, but if crime is so out of control, what about my right to feel safe? If I feel unsafe, the crime is so bad, the situation is so unsafe, who's standing up for me? And then another reporter asks, well, do you think the criminals are going to obey this order? And she goes, no. Without hesitation, she already says, no, the criminals are not going to follow this. But it sends a resounding message to other people to report a crime. What? Again, I'm repeating myself, but she repeated herself a lot during this press conference. If the situation is so out of control and criminals are not going to follow this order, you are only penalizing the law-abiding citizens who need the right to carry a firearm to protect themselves against the criminals who would not follow this order or the laws in the first place. This is so crazy. I can't believe the people of New Mexico. Well, I really can believe it. There's a lot of crazy people in this country. But this drywall destroying lady who, I feel like they just picked her up at a soccer field where kids were playing. There was like a match or something, and they just made one of the moms governor. These are not sensible solutions. If she wanted to go full, Nayib Bukele of El Salvador and just start arresting all the criminals en masse and mass prosecution, she vastly increased judicial capacity, prosecutorial capacity, police capacity. I'd be all behind it. But the major part, the highlighted part of this order was to ban open and concealed carry of law-abiding citizens. I can't stand for it. It's crazy. And she needs to be impeached. And here's the other interesting thing I noticed. homicides in Albuquerque are actually down compared to the year prior. Here we see Albuquerque homicide count lower in 2023 so far. This was posted June 21st, 2023. So far, Albuquerque's homicide count is underpacing last year's record-setting numbers. Last year, 2022, the city saw 120 homicides according to the Albuquerque Police Department. The year before that, there were 110 homicides by the end of the year. So far, it looks like 2023 could bring fewer homicides. And I actually have more recent data. As you can see, this is from the Albuquerque Police Department website. This is APD homicides as of September 8th, 2023. And if we scroll down, we see total homicides, 76 victims, compared to the same time last year. That's 93 victims. And the year before that, 78 victims. So currently 2023 has less homicide victims than both years prior. But now is the time she chooses to put this emergency order. I'm not trying to pretend the situation in Albuquerque is hunky-dory. It is absolutely not. It's still elevated compared to many of the prior years. They absolutely have a ton of crime issues in Albuquerque, and I think the proper measures should be taken, which I talked about earlier as to what the solutions to that could be. Hey guys, Editing Bro here. I just want to make a note that there was a demonstration over the weekend, September 10th, where New Mexicans came out and held a rally where they open carried firearms in defiance of the governor's orders. And it's just nice to see that people are still standing up for their rights in this country. I had a feeling this would happen almost immediately after the order, and it's just good to see that we are still a country and people still stand up for what is right. So what did you guys think when you heard about this order? Do you think it's constitutional, not constitutional? Should the governor be impeached? Or, you know, as I said, I think in a tweet that she should be imprisoned. And I don't want to see anything beyond that. I don't want to see any Fed posting in the comments, but leave your comments down below, your thoughts. And that's the end of the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Social media links are in the description box below, as well as merch. Support us at nuancebro.com/join and support today's video sponsor, LAS Concealment. And I'll see you next time, bro.